The true story of how over 90 people's population declimated rapidly to achieve survival. The Donner Party. On April 16, 1846, 9 covered wagons containing the families of George and Jacob Donner and James Reed and his family set out westward to California from Springfield, Illinois, in search of wealth and a fresh start. It all started with Lansford Hastings' trip to California. At this time, California still belonged to Mexico. He dreamed of gaining California from Mexico and establishing an independent republic with himself leading. So he published Immigrant's Guide to Oregon and California in hopes to send settlers to occupy the province. His route was supposedly faster, however, no one had ever tried it before, including Hastings. On the same day the Donners left Springfield, Hastings left California to help immigrants on their way to California using his cutoff. On May 11, 1846, the wagon train arrived at Independence, Missouri. Heavy rainfall turned the trails to mud, slowing their travels, but that was nothing to what was to come next. Their travels were going better than expected until on May 29th, the first death occurred. Sarah Keyes, Margaret Reed's, James Reed's wife, elderly mother, dies. On June 27, 1846, the wagon train reached Fort Laramie. Here, James Reed met an old friend, a mountain man by the name of James Clyman, who had just came from California using Hastings' shortcut. He warned him to take the regular trail because the wagons wouldn't make it. But James Reed ignored his warning and still veered off the trail towards Fort Ridger with the Reed family, and the Donners, the entrance to Hastings' route on July 20th, 1846. Needed a captain, so soon after starting on the new trail, George Donner was elected captain of the Donner Party. 2 weeks after changing course, the Donner Party arrived at Fort Ridger, where they were supposed to meet Lansford Hastings. But to their surprise, he was nowhere in sight. Instead, they spent 4 days just resting and repairing at Fort Ridger. On July 31st, 1846, the Donner Party left Fort Ridger, and for a week they made good time. But on August 6, 1846, the wagon train came to a halt at the bottom of Echo Canyon. Here, they found a note in the sage bush from Lansford Hastings that stated that the road ahead was impassable and advised them to wait until he could show them another way. 5 days later, they found Hastings on a high peak where he pointed out the better road. Then on August 17th, they turned off track on the new trail. Now, they only made 2 miles a day through the hard terrain. In 6 days, they had only traveled 8 miles. They were 3 weeks off time, with 600 miles to go with the winter weather coming. The train traveled across sandy deserts and lost 36 oxen and abandoned wagons. The cutoff was twice as long as Hastings said it would be. When they checked their inventory, the supply was not enough to last them through the cold weather that was to come. In early September, the other immigrants had made it safely to Sutter's Fort in California, except for the Donner Party. October 5th, a tragic incident happened. 2 wagons became entangled, and the 2 men became angry at each other and started to fight. In defense, James Reed pushed the man to the ground and killed him. The rest of the party banished Reed as punishment. The Donner Party was falling apart. On October 7th, Hardcoop, an elderly man, was pushed out of a wagon, and no one else would let him ride with them. Soon he fell behind, unable to walk, and was left sitting by the road. Then, on October 12th, Paiute Indians killed 21 oxen with poisoned arrows. They had already lost over 100 head of cattle. Finally, just as the weather started to get colder, and their food was almost gone, 7 mules with food and 2 Indian guides came from Sutter's Fort. Then, things started getting rough again. On October 31st, the front axle of George Donner's wagon broke. George Donner gashed his hand trying to make a new one, and his family fell behind. The Donners never came before the rest of the train left for the mountains. James Reed made it to Sutter's Fort and rushed back to his family to give supplies, but he never made it because the weather was too harsh. The wagons couldn't go up to the mountains and couldn't go any further, so they camped in the Sierra Nevada mountains, losing the race against the weather by just 1 day. Some camped in a log cabin for warmth. They tried many times to get through the pass, but failed every time. In order to survive, the Donner Party killed oxen for their meat and combined it with anything they could swallow. They ate boiled hides, bones, twigs, bark, and leaves. Many starved and froze to death. Eventually, they decided that whoever drew the longest slip of paper should be sacrificed. Patrick Dolan did, but no one had the heart to kill him. Many tried to get through the pass, some making snowshoes to hike out, but failed. Most people either died or went insane, just in early December. In order to survive, they ate the flesh of the dead. Only the 2 Indians refused to eat the meat of the dead immigrants. It was requested that the Indians were to be feasted on, so they decided to retreat before they died. Desperate, the Donner Party hunted down the Indians. Unable to walk, the Indians lay, doomed. William Foster, insane, shot them through the head and ate them. On February 19, 1846, the Donner Party was rescued by 4 search parties and took over 2 months. There were 46 survivors out of 63 people, and only 2 families made it intact. The journey was long and rough, but at least some survived to tell the tale of the Donner Party.